Welcome back to a Celtic State of Mind. It's like the good old days because it's Wednesday and I am joined by Kevin Graham and John Hughes. Kev, you jilted him. Did you promise to come back when we signed a player? Is that why you've been away for so long?
John, didn't take this the wrong way, but I promised to come back when you allow me to get a word in edgeways. That was the only reason I promised to come back, mate. So,
aye. You've got no chance, mate.
You've already reneged on that. You've already reneged on that offline, man. You know what I mean? So I'm done. I'm done already. He's got me angry.
I'll tell you, positivity is what today's all about because we've signed a player. We've actually signed a player. John Hughes, it took us 16 days. Obviously, there was plenty of footage on last night. Walking out onto the turf at Celtic Park, the light show was on for him, and we've broken our duck now. All week I've been called some kind of happy clapping pro boards cheerleader for trying to figure out why there hasn't been a deluge of signings, John. And I think the big thing is, in the summer, we would have rather got quality over quantity. And this time round, I think we're just being far more choosy when it comes down to the players. And I think there's going to have been players batted away from Brendan Rodgers in the first couple of weeks of this window. And I hope, and I say hope, that this is a guy that he's been involved in when it comes down to the nitty-gritty of getting him in the door, John.
Well, when it comes to why we haven't been signing players, I would say your interpretation of that is extremely optimistic. As I've been saying for the last few weeks, I don't think we'll get anything that people are looking for in terms of the quality. I just don't see that there's any evidence that that'll happen. I'm delighted we've got a player in. What standard is he? It's interesting in this one. And I ran a poll last night because, unlike a lot of the other players that we've had recently, he comes from a known league. He is a known quantity. So, it's not just a matter of, putting your finger up in the air and, hoping things turn out for the best and, what's the league in Korea like and all this sort of stuff. So we've got a lot more information on him than we've had on players recently. So I felt people might have a stronger opinion on whether it's good, bad or indifferent. So I put out a poll last night and your options were thoughts on Kühn. So delighted, a starter, not good enough, squad filler at best, or valuable contributor. So 55% was delighted, a starter, 30% was valuable contributor. I would be in that category. And that's 85% of people who are pleased with this signing. So I think, that's good for the player. I don't think, but again, it puts him under a bit of pressure straight away because people are going to want to see him delivering. He's not going to get the project player honeymoon. I'm really interested to see him play, and there's lots and lots of information in these stats and stuff which we can get to. Lots of information about his strengths and weaknesses as a player. He appears to be the polar opposite of some players that we have at the moment in terms of his skills. He's very quick, very dynamic. He gets to the line. He's good. He's got good delivery, and then he's not great at passing, and he can't shoot for toffee. So, but we don't really need him to do that. We just need someone to get the ball to Kyogo. Do you know what I mean? That's really, if he can get the ball to Kyogo, he will be a massive success. I hope that's what he can do. I'm looking forward to seeing him.
The thing with these polls, John, I mean, you got a good cross section there yesterday. I'm glad it was a positive result. Yeah. Kevin Graham, it is difficult when we're, back in the day, you would be linked to players who were maybe playing domestic football in Scotland, players who you might have kept an eye on down south, and you knew a fair bit about them. The world's changed, and we're all the same when it comes down to that. Unless you've got an intimate knowledge of a particular league, when you're linked to a player, we've all got to go and do a wee bit of homework and research on them. And I think the disappointing or the frustrating thing for me is it's hard to it really is difficult to make a call on any signing if they're not, that well known to you. So what John was saying there, what did we know about O or Yang or Kwon? When it comes to Tilio, we speak to Jared from Celtic Down Under. We try and get a wee bit more information on that. That's something you can do. You can speak to people. Obviously, we are not going to be asking certain Austrian football specialists into Acsom's birth for sure, because it's one of these ones, Kev, where it's difficult. I mean, even when Jota came in, how much did we know about him? We can go on the show reels. We can speak to people who knew Portuguese football. But every one of these signings that come in, if they're not domestically based, we don't know a great deal about them, and we've got to go into it, I think, with an open mind. And I think that the extreme positivity and optimism that John spoke about earlier, I think without that, what else have I got? If Brendan Rodgers doesn't have his dibs on this signing, then I'm going to be very disappointed. But it is difficult to make a call on it, but it seems to be largely positive, Kev.
I think the large positivity comes from the fact it's the 17th of January and a lot of the supports were just desperate for a shiny new toy to try and build up. Look, we haven't broke our MO. There's a boy, he's young. He's came in for a decent price. There's a possible sell-on fee if he's a success. He's no different for any of the 9 players that we signed in the summer. That is bottom line when you actually look at it. I mean, you look at it this summer when we signed a guy for Legia Warsaw, who I would probably put in a slightly higher position than Rapid Vienna. He's still struggling to adapt to rumours that Rodgers doesn't rate him. We signed a guy who won a Swedish league title medal, a Swedish international. He's slower and a week in Burnt Island. I mean,
leave Burnt Island out of this.
I mean, we do not know how this is going to turn out, but I'm going to be positive because my daughter ran down the stairs last night and he went, "We seen the new boy that we signed?" I went, "Aye, I have. She went, "Oh, he's Matt O'Reilly Holt, ain't he?" So
that's what it's called.
Aye, so I'll just leave it like that. She's really excited about seeing him. So I'm really excited about seeing him because obviously you'll probably get a run out against Bucky Thistle, and they're not going to be able to tell much against Bucky Thistle. But we haven't changed nothing that in the summer, and I think a lot of folk were having a look at big named. We might get a big name loan. I think that's where we're probably at this window now. I don't think we're going to get a full-time centre for it, and I think we're going to have a look at the loan market for a centre forward. It's too late in the window. If we were discussing guys like Shankland and that, we would already be discussing that with Hearts at this precise moment in time, and Hearts would have leaked the price, and it would be all over the shop. These things actually do take time, and that Kühn video was probably filmed on the 29th of December. It was probably kicking about then, and they've just kept us hanging on. Look, our wingers are poor. If he improves that, I'm going to be really, really happy. That's it.
Yeah, I was talking yesterday, Kev, about obviously we get a lot of comments coming in. Sometimes in a 1 hour show, 1,000 comments on the show, and you try and gauge the feeling going into transfer windows as to what the preferences, what are the priorities, what do you want to see coming in before the end of the window. And largely, and I agree and disagree with some of this, largely what I was seeing was goalkeeper, left back, striker, centre mid, defensive mid. Not as many people going for the wingers. Did it surprise you, John, that was the first deal over the line? We do have quite a few on the books already.
No, not particularly. We have an issue at goalkeeper. I don't think we can sign another goalkeeper if we've still got all that lot on our books. So either Siegrist is going to have to go or Joe Hart goes at the end of the year. So I'm not expecting us to sign a goalkeeper. Left back, you would think, is easy. So when I said not particularly, I suppose left back should have been a lot easier because we have a guy there. Yes, he cost a lot of money, but there's 2 of them. One of them doesn't play. So, we need to get him off the books. But at the same time, I think backup for Greg Taylor is really important. What happens if he gets injured? We don't have anything there. So it's really important from my point of view. I would expect that slot to be filled, but then again, I expected that in the summer. Yeah, I mean, we've got a lot of wingers, but as Kevin pointed out, they're not very good. So we have a lot of guys there who have either been injured long term, coming back from injury, haven't been producing, don't particularly fit this system the way they fitted Ange's system. You could say that about both Maeda and Abada. So Brendan's expecting guys to make things happen, whereas Ange was more system dependent. Mm-hmm. This boy he looks like he makes things happen. I think that's probably why we're getting him. He's strong at dribbling. He's strong at going past people. He's pacey. But I think he's going to be a very frustrating watch, because I think on our side he will be good enough to get in some fantastic positions, and apparently he is good enough at getting in positions. But then once he gets in those positions, then your problems start, because he can't finish. Now, they say he can't finish. I mean, that's the information. That's what it looks like. But again, you heard someone else saying that his teammates were partially responsible for lots of those finishes not happening, and he should have had more assists and so on and so forth. So you can't know for sure. If you wanted to be negative, you'd say 24 is not young at this stage. 24 is not young in football terms. And he's from a known league. And so 3 million from that league, is that a lot of money? They just punt them on.
How much did we sign Ball and Golly for the exact same mob?
It was around the 3 million mark, was it not?
Aye.
About 3 million quid.
Mm-hmm.
So
that's really depressing, Kev. Thanks very much.
I know.
So what I'm trying to get at, John, is we need an improvement in the wingers. And once again, this is a punt. And even though it's a known league, even though he's 24, he's 3 years older than the average age of the guys that they signed with the summer. But if Brendan Rodgers is doing the bottom end of the English Premiership, there's no way he's signing a winger for Rapid Vienna for £3 million.
No.
No way.
I'm saying
that's what makes me worry that this is just another guys who are sitting watching YouTube videos with Mark Wall's WhatsApp group. Go, by the way, somebody's phoned me. Go and have a look at this guy, and we'll have a look at him.
That was the second negative point, Kev. You're absolutely right. That was the second negative point, because the last definite quality players we got from European leagues were 6 million apiece. Mm-hmm. And we've bought them outright. It's not a loan to buy. So, does it immediately jump up and scream, this is a quality signing? No. And much as we've done, and much as we did in the summer, we'll have people saying, you have to give him a chance. You don't know anything about it. You don't know enough about it. We know quite a lot about this guy. And is he the starter quality that we really wanted? No, I think he's going to contribute, because as you say, just because the standard that we have at the moment is really not that great. He'll be a contributor, but he's not. I wouldn't say it's an inspirational signing, but then again, the last inspirational signings, I think, probably were Jota and CCV, that we could be real happy with, and that's because they were, we knew everything about them and wanted to keep them. When we are in the market we shop in, nothing's going to be inspirational, nothing's going to be easy. We're looking to develop a guy who's already 24. Mm-hmm. So, Brendan's a good coach. Can he work magic? Is the guy just going to keep naturally developing? People have said he's got quite a high ceiling. We've heard that about a couple of people in the past as well. It's very difficult to know. He might flourish at Celtic. Maybe this is the environment, because we've seen players before who were, abandoned, who came in and, were brilliant here when they were dreadful elsewhere. So, I wish it was easy to me to know, but we can only base our opinions on the information we have already.
No, spot on. There's a few things in that. The first one being, judging the player by the transfer fee. And again, I go back to what we were saying earlier. When you've got an intimate knowledge of a particular player, you might have your own valuation in your mind of them, but it's difficult to put a valuation on a player who's coming in from a league that you might not watch all that regularly. But that potential that you're talking about, was talking about this last night on the socials, and the point I made in relation to the minute you talk about progress or developing a player, sometimes people look at it and think, oh, that's not a good thing. And I was talking about the fact that he could develop, Kev, under Brendan Rodgers. And a few people came in and said, but he's 24. What are you talking about? You can't develop. Well, the point I made was when Brendan Rodgers came in, if that was the case, you telling me that the players he inherited didn't develop under Brendan Rodgers, who were 24 or older. Well, of course they did. I would argue that Stuart Armstrong developed under Brendan Rodgers. Right?
There's a lot of them. There's a lot of them that down to England have had half decent careers because of Brendan Rodgers. But Tommy Rogic, I thought, played his best football under Brendan. Scott Brown, I think, for a couple of seasons played out his skin under Brendan Rodgers. He was in his early 30s at that point. And I think even if you look at Scott Sinclair coming in at 27, I think he was at the time. New lease of life. Did he develop? You'd need to ask him. I'm pretty sure he talks really highly of his time under Brendan at Celtic. So 24, it's not a kid. We're into Mikey Johnson territory. It's not a kid. However, there is always room for development if your gaffer is somebody like Brendan, who sees that as his biggest kind of, for me, that's his specialism. That's his biggest talent as a coach, isn't it? Aye, that's what's kind of annoyed me about Brendan the first half of the season when he's been talking about I need quality. Well, you rank yourself as a coach, mate. Take what you've got there and actually make it better, eh? So look, I understand that we're not going to pay 10, 12 million pound for folk and stuff like that. And I'm glad that we've got somebody in. I'm glad that we've got somebody in, but as John's poll, I commented on John's poll, I went like that. Well, is there a case where I haven't got a clue how it's going to turn it? Because we don't really have a clue. Rodgers backs himself to develop players, and he needs to back himself to develop players like here. And I think there is talent there for him to develop. And this player, he didn't fire about Bayern Munich and Ajax if he can't kick a ball. That's bottom line. Your career can go a wee bit off the rails and that, but maybe this is a club to get him back on the rails. But I can't say that I'm really, really excited about the signing of him. I'm looking forward to seeing him because we do need help in that position.
What do you think about the length of his contract, Kev?
Surprising, eh? 5.5 year deal. I don't know. We seem to be getting a lot of these signings now, longer term deals, eh? And it's maybe a financial thing. Maybe it's an agent thing. I do not know why we're getting guys long deal. The day the 2.5 year contract seems long gone, eh?
It does, but I'll chip in there and say that I think a lot of the signing is based on this kind of raw talent that you've spoken about, Kev, that's been identified with various big clubs, and it's not quite worked out. But that is where we are, John. We need to try and find a nugget. We really need to find that, in amongst a lot of like agent pressured signings, etc. We need to find a nugget, and I think when we bring them in, the length of the contract for me is us. That's the punt, because we're thinking, right, we'll get them on a long contract just in case this one, kicks on.
But I agree with the reasons for the long contracts. But the point about that is you need to be better at bringing players in than we have been, because otherwise, the long contract makes complete sense. Try and nail them down. Try and make sure we get maximum value. If you're 100% sure, that he's definitely going to improve and we can sell him on for a profit. But we've been left with a whole load of guys, even currently, on super long contracts that are going nowhere fast.
Yes.
And so it's not that the risk then is all on the club. The risk then is all on us, because we're paying out those wages, and you can't make someone leave. If they're happy not to play football, you can't make them leave. So usually in recruitment they try and minimise the risk. I understand what they've done here. As I say, we are looking for raw talent. We need to nail that down. We need to make sure it's not poached immediately. We need to make sure if it is poached, we get maximum money for it. But there needs to be definite value there. You can't. That can't be a sort of coin flip. You need to be sure of yourself if you're doing that. because we're going to end up with a massive bloated squad, quite like the one that we have just now. A load of guys pulling out, as you said, was 150 grand a week doing absolutely nothing, and you can't get shot of them. So, it's a risk.
It's a big risk. I mean, on the flip side of that as well, Kev, I'm going to come to you here because there was some early interest in some players playing domestically. Shanklin and Miovski being the two obvious ones. And the clubs in question want big money for them. They're talking big money to transfer them to a fellow side, right? And then you've got a player, let's say, like Fitzgarden, who we've been talking about, currently playing for Bromby, 21 years of age, 14 goal contributions in 21 games this season. You put it out there, and a lot of people come back saying, no chance am I paying £7 million for that player. No way am I paying £7 million for that player from the Danish league. So there's two ends of the scale here, and you look at that player and you think to yourself, right, see when we signed a 19-year-old Edouard, what had he done? Right? He'd played 17 games for Toulouse on loan, scoring 1 goal. We brought him in on loan, of course. That was the key, going back to what John said before. Shopping in European market, bringing them in on loan, seeing how good they are, try before you buy, and then you know that your investment is nothing certain, but it's more of a sure thing when you put that money in. But on the one hand, there's people turn their nose up at £3 million players. When you're presented with someone who's regarded as being a £7 million player, no chance for no spending that. But what do you get for £7 million, Kev? You don't get somebody who has, really done it in the top 6, 7, 8 leagues in Europe.
You didn't get a Maurice Jens, for £7 million. Then Jens went for, what was it, 8 million when he eventually left us.
Wow.
Look, transfer fees between clubs now they're very, very murky, and you just have to look at every player that we sign is going to be a certain MO, and it's going to be like this Kühn that we've signed, because folk are probably getting excited about as he's 24. Oh, he's 24, that must mean he's first team ready. Might not be. You didn't ken, he's bobbed about a bit for a year, but we need him to be first team ready. That's the big thing. That's where we are in this transfer window. We need players to come in that are first team ready. I mean, it could turn out that Narovski is now first team ready because he's had his injury problems and that, and now he's got a break and he's managed to get into the side. That could work. You look at everybody that we've signed, every one of them ticks a couple of boxes, like Lagerbielke, young Swedish player of the year. Oh, that's a good box to tick for somebody to come and develop. Nairowski comes for a decent level, Polish internationalist. That's another good box to tick. Odin Holm, very, very highly rated in the Tipper League. And you're going, well, these all tick them. We moan about them. Because
I'm impressed. I'm impressed you know the name of that league.
The Tipper League, and I love that.
Just flowed off the tongue there, Johnny. Just threw that in. Loved it.
I think like the Premier League should be the Camper Van League or something like that. Just something like the Tipper Truck League or something. We should look for a sponsor to call it like that. All these guys have got potential. And that's the market that we are in. You look at Nat Phillips. Nat Phillips has got Rodgers' fingerprints on her, and it didn't work. Really, really didn't work. So that's maybe for all of us wanting guys for doing in England and more known guys. That's maybe a wee bit of a warning sign for us that maybe we've panicked a wee bit, and these guys might come good eventually, but they're going to take a wee bit longer to come good. I mean, you name all the guys that Rodgers had before, they were all there under Ronnie Dyler, and how many of them kicked on under Ronnie Dyler. We've went through a transition of styles. I think your style is stale. There's maybe quite a few players in that squad that are stale, that have got used to playing a certain way and it suited them, and they need a wee bit of a charge. The team needs a wee bit of a charge in every position, I think. So we're bringing in a guy here who's going to challenge wingers who have been up and down. And good luck to the fella. All we can hope that he walks in first team ready and kicks absolutely loving daylights with it.
Yeah,
that's all
definitely.
we can hope for.
I think one of the biggest reasons, John, that going for a winger might have surprised me. And I know these things, you can't design them. You can't say, right, the first signing is going to be a winger followed by X, Y, and Z, because it all depends on how long each of the deals takes, if there's any issues in that process. But I'm going to read out to you now the list of first-team wingers we have to try and get a sense of where they all sit now and who's going to be at the club, either on the 1st of February or indeed after the summer transfer window. So here's the list. We've got Louis Palma, who I think has impressed more than any of the other signings that we brought in the summer thus far. I know he's inconsistent, but I think over the piece, he's done pretty well. We've got Lila Bada, and I want to focus a wee bit more on his future as well. Where does this move leave him? Obviously, Daisen Maeda, who's off on international duty at the moment, as is Yang. Tilio, who's had a couple of cameo appearances, a few minutes, and he's also at the Asian Cup. And of course, we've got Jamesy Forrest, Mikey Johnston, and our new recruit, Nicolas Kühn. So there you go. 8 players, John. What do you do with that lot? Because we can't retain 8 wingers, can we?
No, and I wouldn't expect us to. But I think the problem is we need half of those guys out the door. But, you know, again, with the problem is with the contracts and getting rid of them, it's not easy to get rid of them, especially at this time of year. I mean, that's a hell of a list. So I think really out of that, you'd want to keep Abada, Palma, Maeda, and Kühn. Jamesy Forrest is towards the end of his career. Tilio is completely unknown quantity at this point because he hasn't kicked a ball, but that does not bode well for him at all. I don't think Yang's particularly good, and I don't think MJ is particularly good. So that would leave us with 4 wingers, which I think is fair enough. But again with Abada, it's an interesting one. Not to sort of throw petrol on a fire here, but at the end of the day, people saying, "I can understand why he wants to leave," and the thing with the fans and all the rest of it. I'm sorry. I just don't buy that at all. I think that's an easy out. What are you talking about? Do you think our existing squad are all massive fans and supporters of the former armed conflict? Are the big Republican politics supporters, are they? So I just don't buy that. What about all the Catholics that play for Rangers? How do they square that circle? You're going to play football at a club. You're not going to agree with a lot of things that the fans say. And unless you interrogated the history of that club for their political, affiliations before you joined, then there's no point in greeting about it now. So you're a professional player. Go and do your job. And if you want to leave for football reasons, that's fine. If you want to leave for other reasons, I think that's extremely immature and unrealistic. You are not going to agree with all the sectors of the support of any club, unlikely. So I think you have to accept your options are limited. You're a professional. Go on and do your job. And again, nobody has personally given him any grief whatsoever. So this is about a geopolitical situation over which neither our fans nor he has any control. He has not been getting any grief from the fans. So, from the point of view, I can understand why he wants to leave. Well, if that's the reason he wants to leave, no, I'm sorry, I don't understand it. And I don't accept it as a valid reason. The
thing is, John, the only person that's gave him any abuse has been the Israeli national manager.
Yeah.
And the only other folk that are probably giving him a hard time for playing for Celtic are the Israeli national manager, maybe his agent, maybe other folk back in Israel go, you need to leave that football club if you want to set foot back in Israel. So it's not up to the player at this point. He might be having a look at going, I didn't want to leave, but there's folk going to make me leave, and it's nothing going to be Davy Celtic. There'll be folk in the background doing that. And the fact is, you've got a national team manager calling a whole support anti-Jewish. That's going to weigh heavily on the young lad's mind. So I'm willing to give him a big let out when I say if he leaves this winter or in the summer, it will only be anything to do with him. It'll be down to pressure outlive him with the guys who are pushing his career.
I think my take on the wingers, firstly, before we get to Abada, is we keep Palmer, Abada, Maeda, and our new arrival. And we loan out Yang and Tilio. We keep Forrest as a backup. And I like, not because I keep saying this, not because he's good around the dressing room, I like to have the core of players who have come through, know the club, know the city, all that stuff. And also, he's a player as well. I mean, he is contributing. It's not just like he's on the coach handing out the sandwiches. And Mikey Johnson, I would let him go. If we go out the end of this transfer window and Abada's away, I'll be really disappointed. Massively disappointed. Because I don't think he's fulfilled his potential at Celtic. And I don't mean his career potential. Whatever he goes on and does, I think we expect big things from him. He's been spoken of a player who could have a career down south. Who knows if he can step up to that. This season's been a bit stop-start. Last season, loads of appearances off the bench, but he did play in most games, as was pointed out last week by Alan Morrison. And I was really, really excited, John, to see how Brendan could work with him. And obviously, because of everything that's been happening, the club are supporting him. But as you see, he's not received any direct abuse from our fan base. I mean, that's not going to happen. And I think that if Abada does leave under these circumstances, I'll be really disappointed for the club. I think for the player, as Kev says, there's going to be people turning the screw on him, isn't there?
Well, there could be, but those people, again, have their own invested interests. So is the Israeli manager not going to pick him? What's he going to do about that? Is he going to state that as a reason?
Is he just trying to feather his own nest on that one, John, whereby if he does pick him, he gets a bit of flack?
Well, I mean, I don't know about that.
It's not self-preservation and it's all about self here, eh? The folk who have commented on it, the players never commented on it, the club have never commented on it. I didn't think he'll leave in this transfer window anyway.
Yeah. I agree with Paul John. I hope he doesn't. And again, I've expressed why I don't believe that's a legit reason, but I hope he doesn't leave. And I hope he doesn't leave, potentially at the end of the season, because I think he's one of these boys that has a high ceiling. I think he could be considerably better than he is, and he's already very good. If he can work on, getting past a man, that sort of thing, if he can get the coach to do, his, if you think about what we've just said about Kühn, him and Kühn are basically polar opposites. So Kühn's dribbling past people, flying past people, can beat a man, can't finish. Now, Abada hasn't got a trick, can't really beat a man, but at the same time, absolutely lethal finisher, and in important games as well. I made loads of jokes last year about him living in that Rangers left back's pocket. Was his name Ballongun or whatever his name? Barisic, thank you. Basically, I know he's got tremendous potential, but again, if he's had his head turned in terms of against the support, if he now feels uncomfortable, fair enough. You can't legislate for feelings. I don't agree. I think, as I say, I just don't think it's valid. But you can't legislate for feelings. If he doesn't want to be here, he's going to go. But again, we don't have a huge number of players with a very high ceiling. You'd be talking about the likes of Matt O'Reilly, Abada. Who else have we got? In terms of, you think? I mean, I heard the Austrian journalist saying Kühn has a high ceiling. He could go on to be really, really good. But I just don't know. But I mean, I think that Brendan, as I said before the break, I didn't think this window was going to save us, and I think Brendan has to save us. And very much in agreement with what Kev said right at the start of the show is Brendan has to show his mettle here. He has to coach these guys into being a better group than they currently are. That's why he's getting paid £3.5 million. He's not getting paid £3.5 million to play Football Manager and pick guys out. And in fact, the other point that Kev made about Roger, about Nat Phillips, that was all Rodgers. It was a total disaster. But that's why, again, I've stressed the importance of Mark Lowell's position numerous times. And the importance is we cannot rely on a manager. We shouldn't be relying on a manager. We've seen the flaws in that. You come in, you play a particular style, then the new guy plays a different style. There's a whole load of people there that don't fit in. You're constantly in a period of transition because they're coming in every couple of years and then away they go and all of that. But the problem is we've got Mark Lowell in that position, and he's not really up to the job, as he's already demonstrated. So, I wouldn't want to rely on Rodgers for signings at all. But the problem is the guy that we need to rely on is whoever's in Mark Lowell's position, and we can't rely on him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Now, sorry, Kev, you're on mute, mate. You're on mute. There we go.
Sorry, back? I had a coughing fit. I made a great point there, Ted. Nobody heard it, and I can't remember.
All right, we'll move on. We'll move on.
I mean, you look at Bobby Firmino came in last week as well. He was talking about his time at Liverpool, and he says about Rodgers. Rodgers wanted Benteke, and so the transfer committee bought Firmino, and Rodgers got Benteke, and he played Firmino well at position. And Firmino says this guy doesn't ken what I'm here for, and his career improved when Rodgers actually left. And that's the kind of problem that we have got. Rodgers is a development coach and he makes players better. Then when you look at some of the players that he has brought in, you think, that's a bit dodgy. He hasn't managed to make them better. But where he is, and the fact is we're in Scotland, and you're very unlikely to get the finished article coming here. Even Jota and CCV were damaged goods, but well, CCV was, but Jota, wasn't really going anywhere, and he still had a lot of development today, and he's still got a lot of development today, and CCV has now developed into a very, very good centre half. But the problem that he's seeming to have now is how many games a season is he actually going to be fit enough to play? And that's going to be factored into it as well. Going back to the wingers, I didn't get to answer the wingers. I actually think there's a better player in Yang than Palmer. I really do. I think Yang's got a better footballing brain than what Palmer will ever have. And if we get, I think they'll flip by this point next season. I do think they will flip by this point next season. I think Palmer's stats completely are overshooting the mark. His stats are phenomenal for a player who lacks quite a bit when you actually watch him. I think he's flatter to deceive, and he's one position I think we can upgrade quite easily, and I actually think Yang's there. I do think Yang's there. Right. I must admit, I was at McDermott Park that day where he was offside 52 times in about 3 minutes and didn't ken whether he was in Perth or Pitlochry or like Peterhead. But I think there's a player there.
Everybody's getting it the day for Kevy. Burnt Island, Peterhead. Did you say Logelly? No, Pitlochry. 2 different places in the world.
It's Pitlochry, aye.
Yeah, they're all getting it.
Peterborough.
The thing is, for me, right, you could go through, that sounds like a Proclaimer song all of a sudden. You could go through every single time we sign a player, right? And you're going to have some brilliant takes on it. They're the ones that I would use, obviously, if I've ever had one. And then you would have other ones. And I've not looked at this, by the way. You could go back to when we signed Shane Duffy, Albion Ajeti, Barkas. And I'm sure of all the contributors who spoke about those players that week on Acsom, some people were going on about how great they were. It's just the way it is, right? But when it comes to Palma and Yankev, that's based on the eye test as much as anything, isn't it? I mean, you're looking at Yang thinking, right, there's a rough diamond in there. What is it, do you think, that is lacking from Palma's game? Because I like Palma. I think he's inconsistent. I think that he's indisciplined when it comes to picking up silly bookings, which obviously is no good for a winger going into big games without him being available. And I also think that he hides when the chips are doing a bit. And that comes into a mentality, doesn't it?
Right.
How much of that can be improved upon? Well, I think consistency in wingers sometimes goes hand in hand, doesn't it? The other two, I think if you're willing to improve it and you've got the right coach, it can be improved. I'm going to go the other side of your argument and say that Palmer's going to get better and better in this side, and Yang, I think, might need a development loan. So you and I disagree on it, but that's fair enough.
Well, I would just I agree with part of what Kev says. I'm not sure if I agree entirely that Yang will get much better, but Does he have potential to? Well, I think for the reasons that Kühn has potential, because there are certain things you cannot coach. You cannot coach power, you cannot coach pace. You can't make a guy, twice as fast as he is. So if he's got those abilities to start with, then you can coach the rest of it. But Palma is not quick, and that's not something you can coach. So from that point of view, Kev has a point. Yang's a lot.
He's a Haskabanovic. He just reminds me so much of Haskabanovic.
Well, that's another winger we've got. He's coming back as well.
It's scary. And it's all to do with metal. And I've seen it plenty of times, John, Greg Taylor going off his rocker at him because he will not release the ball. He won't. He just doesn't seem to have that football there yet, where he knows when to pass, when to cut inside, when to go outside, when Taylor's made an outside run, how to use the decoy and stuff like that. And there was one point, I think it was a 1-1 game against Motherwell, you could see Greg Taylor screaming at Rodgers as if to go, get him off, because he's no doing what you've told him to do, and he's no doing what I'm telling him to do.
Yeah.
I love the moan, does Greg, doesn't he?
That's frustrating.
Now, Palmer's 24 as well, Kev, right? So we've spent some of the show talking about how a 24-year-old that's coming in, we can tap into all the good stuff he's got in his locker and all that, and he can still develop at that age. So surely that the same goes for Palmer. I mean, I think when you're signing these guys that don't come from a club that has got standards and demands, people say you're entitled to this. You're not entitled to anything, but you can demand it, because the club has got a standard of success and a win rate, and every single draw and defeat is going to be scrutinised at Celtic. If you come from a club where that isn't the mentality, Palmer's maybe, setting up a goal or scoring a goal, Kevin, coming away thinking, at least I've done my bit, in a previous club. And it's about trying to get him into that different way of thinking under what some people used to call an elite coach. We could argue that and debate that all day long. I'm going to say a very, very good coach in Brendan Rodgers at a club whose demands are right up there. And that, I think, takes a wee bit of time to adjust to that. I mean, even, you remember Jota in his first season, Kev?
Aye.
He frustrated the life out of me at times, and particularly the lack, not even the lack of defensive ability, but, the willingness to be a defender when we were on the defence. But he sorted it out. And I know he's a wee bit younger, but I just do think that he can be refined. I do think that Palmer can be refined, and he could turn out a right good signing for Celtic. He's only 24.
There's definitely an attitude issue in terms of, harking back to the old days, but my dad went to Crystal Palace and he went off his nut. There was a boy broke through the centre and the right back was, about 10, 15 yards away from him, made no attempt to stop him at all. And he was going ballistic. I said, what are you doing? He said, well, it's not my job. Do you know what I mean? It's just the attitude. You just couldn't believe the attitude. People were just like, "Well, it's nothing
John,
to do with me." So
you know who else said that? Who was it recently? Kev, I think you were there. Told us a story about Moravchik, and that was his attitude.
Aye, it was Lambert and Lennon were putting the absolute, were destroying him at half time at Ibrox. When he's no chasing back, and Lubo's sitting in the dressing room going, "Just give me the ball. I didn't chase back. That's your job. Just give me the ball." That
was Martin O'Neill that told that story. Now, Lubo, before anybody asks, I'm not comparing Lubo to Palmer. Absolutely not. But there are players who've got that mentality. I always remember Arsenal signed a player called Glenn Helder. You remember him back in the 90s?
Yes.
And he had the same attitude. It was like, I'm not chasing anything back. I'm
a
winger.
You look at last night, I watched a wee bit of West Ham getting put out with Bristol City. And not one of the West Ham players wanted to be on that pitch last night. Not one of them wanted to be there facing a championship team at -2 in a cup tie. They weren't up for it at all. And I sometimes get that impression with Palmer. It's fine when things are going well, but when the chips are done, he'll go, I can hide in plain sight, which Bobby Petter was fantastic at doing. Looks like he wants the ball, but he doesn't really. He knows that where he's standing, there's no way that the ball's going to get to him. And there is room for improvement with Palmer, but I think he's only playing the new because we've got nobody better in front of him. And even though I think there's more room with Yang, I think his stats have saved Palmer, really. Just
the
now.
The goal contributions.
The goal contribution and the assist contribution. That game against Motherwell, he got man of the match for 2 assists. I think one was a corner kick and one was a shot that was going by the post. That's all he done the whole game. And he managed to get man of the match for it.
That was a good corner kick. We don't do that often enough. No, I get it. Sometimes those moments, and again, I think there's an argument to say that Turnbull's a wee bit like that, right? And that he's not going to do what Brendan Rodgers wants him to do. And a lot of that will be the defensive elements, because if you look at Callum McGregor, the three midfielders that we broke up on was Callum McGregor, Matt O'Reilly and Paulo Bernardo. They're all capable of defending. You put in David Turnbull, he'll get you a goal, he'll score you a goal from distance to unlock a tight defence and all this kind of stuff. He can strike a dead ball, but he's not going to give you all the other bit. And I think sometimes people always say, John, but Turnbull scored 7 goals this season. You know, and they hang everything on the goal contribution rather than the overall play. Do you think maybe that's one of the issues with Palmer?
Yeah, well, I mean, you know, again, I don't think he really contributes to the overall play unless he is delivering something like that. You know, he seems to be, you know, he's trying to score off corners and all the rest of it. Look, he's a talented boy. But like you know, this is the problem with all the people we are buying just now. Nobody's the finished article. Like, nobody at all is a finished article. Certainly since Mark Lowell came in, nobody's the finished article. We're just not buying them. And so, you know, if he had pace, then the chances are we wouldn't have got him. You know, certainly we would have needed to get him when he was a lot younger. So, yeah, we're going to have to accept what is, you know, what failures are acceptable to us. We're going to have to work out, not accept, we're going to have to work out what failings are acceptable to us, because our wingers are not going to be the full package. You know, we're very lucky we have Kyogo, but even Kyogo up there on his own sometimes can look very isolated. You know, but I mean, I think he's the closest thing maybe to the full package. Matt O'Reilly's certainly coming on. But everyone's going to have faults. You know, all our players are going to have faults. I mean, even if you look at Hatate, never mind David Turnbull, Hatate, who is like, you know, was one of our most important players for a season, but has significant flaws to his game. So, you know, we're just going to have to, you know, work out which one of these flaws can be merged best into a proper team. You know, I assume it's a team contribution that they're going to have to make.
John, there was a big thing. I don't know if you saw the article written by Craig Fowler. It was in the Scotsman, which was regarding about everybody in Scotland reducing squads. When he was talking about Livingston, I didn't ken this. Livingston have got a 25-man first-team squad. Right. Livingston have got a 25-man first-team squad, and Dundee are something like running at 23, 24, and are on track to lose £3.5 million this season in the Scottish Premier League. And he was talking about reducing squad sizes. Mm-hmm. And this is where I think we are with a lot of these players, when we're all talking about stats, contributing this and that. And this is where I hope Rodgers and the coaching staff and the scouting staff are actually looking and go, right, if we're getting this done to an 18-man squad, who's in that 18-man squad in the current team that we've got just now? And I'll be brutally honest here, Mikey Johnson, David Turnbull, Palmer wouldn't be in that 18-man squad. There'd be a lot of them not in that 18-man squad. If you're talking about
squad. Right, that's a great debate, Kev. That's a brilliant debate to have, because then you really are looking at the cream of the squad. I would say Palmer's in my top 18, no, John.
The now, aye, because there's nobody else.
Yeah. Well, that is a great point, Kevin. I wish you'd mentioned. I wish you'd said you were going to mention it, because I really need a squad list. I need the squad list in front of me to try and work through. You know, you could ditch goalies off of that. I mean, out of that, I think, Paul John, did we not say that out of the 32 there is, you could bin 10, 11, easy. And then it's just a matter of, as Kev says, you're going from 18 to 21, so there's maybe an argument over 3 players, you know, about whether they would make it. But 10 of them you could just be without, no bother.
Yeah, I mean, at the moment, you're right, Kev, Palmer would be. Palmer's in my starting 11. Never mind the top 18. As we sit here, I've not seen enough of the new boy to suggest that he will be in there. I'm a massive fan of Abada. I know Maeda divides opinion, but he brings so much to the team. I'm at the point where I'm happy to see Mikey Johnson go for the benefit of his own career. Forrest is going to stick around. Someone picked up on the fact that I said he knows the city. He does know the city. He knows his way to goal as well. I mean, 100 goals, 100 goal
he knows his way.
Assists.
He knows his way out of Ayrshire nightclubs as well with putting up his trousers, allegedly.
Yeah, but he's calmed down from those days. Was that no when he used to enjoy a wee pint here and there with Tony Stokes? But obviously he's much more mature now, John.
What was it that I always think Roy Keane can be very funny on these things, and he's talking about around the squad. What does that mean?
I know.
Does he do tricks? Does he organise parties? What do you do? You know, it's just that he's no, because, you know, when we hear that, we think that seems a bit vague. And, you know, and a professional football player hears it and goes, what are you talking about?
Exactly.
Good around the squad. What did he do? I know. You know, is he coming over to everyone's house? You know, telling them how good they are? What are you talking about?
I know.
You know.
The Tommy Johnston of the squad. The guy that's just always there. Doesn't do much. He did score that goal against St Mirren with his studs. Kevin Mullen, afternoon, Acsom. TJ, if you're tuning in, I'm sorry. I thought you were a great striker, just injury prone. Kevin Mullen, afternoon, Acsom. Let's hope. Is it Kühn or Kühn, by the way? Is it Kühn? How do you pronounce the name?
I think I'll stick with Kühn. You can go wrong there.
Yes, hits the ground running. Bucky Thistle, the perfect game. Give him his debut. When was the last time we got a player and just threw him right in? Probably in Andy's time. He didn't have an issue doing that. Double denim. Afternoon, folks. Great to have our new number 10 in the door. Yeah, I forgot to mention number 10. Hopefully, he can provide the service and distribution our strikers have been lacking this season. Would be nice to see him get on at the weekend. Does that suggest? I don't know what the numbers suggest. Liam Scales was given number 5 and barely played until this season, John.
I just thought, I know I mentioned that last night on Twitter. I know it's people just have completely random squad numbers now, but normally what happens is the first team players, or it used to be this way, the first team players, once they get to the first team, they're fighting over the numbers. Like, you know, it used to be that way. You know, to get between sort of 1 to 11, you'd have a fight over that. You wouldn't. Once you get into the team, you wouldn't happy. I assumed you wouldn't really be happy to be number 46 anymore. You know, if you're established.
Yeah, you're right. 42, Callum McGregor.
So,
you know, Kyogo's 8. You know, he's not a number 8 for me. They talk about the number 10 now, Kev, it's as if it's a position. There used to be a false 9. That's kind of fallen out of vogue. But the number 10...
That really annoys me. It really annoys me. You can go down like the park for a walk on a Saturday morning and there'll be loads of wee games happening with children, with guys, and you get coaches who failed football players go, you're a number 6, you're a number 8, you're today this and that. No, you're a midfielder, run up and down, kick folk and put the ball in the back of the net.
Do the coaches have their initials on their bubble jackets, okay? Yes. Because that's the most important thing. Yes. They're all pseudo Mourinhos, aren't they? Right. Joe Hamilton. By the way, listen, anybody that puts their time into helping young players develop, I take my hat off to you.
I just laugh. It's all the Carragher and the Gary Neville-isms that they all start using,
Aye. I remember one that used to start talking like Alex Ferguson when he was doing a team talk, Kev. His name will remain. No, he actually, you know how he's got that wee bit of a speech impediment sometimes, Fergie. I'm not going to try and do the impression. But he started talking like that, and it wasn't even the way he spoke. Like he was an actual coach.
This is all off culture here, but I heard a half-time team talk at a game that I was watching, an amateur game, and the amateur manager says to his players, "Yous are no training on Tuesday night. You're coming into this room to write down how yous are all terrible."
How many of them did it? Okay. Joe Hamilton, hail, and a good afternoon. And now Joe knows, having watched a lot of Austrian football.
That's good. I'll take Joe's word.
And he was saying that our new boy is a baller. So I like that. it doesn't always work. Jared's a big fan of Tillio, but I mean, listen, Tillio's not really had the minutes.
By the way, Joe's also a great musician, if you weren't aware. He writes good songs. He's written a couple of good Celtic songs as well. He's a good man. It's our Joe.
Yeah, get involved. I need to check that out. Celtic follower, delighted to see Kühn's a Rodgers signing. Let's hope he takes total control of transfers and from now on.
But can I just also say, sorry, jumping in again, Paul John, when you mentioned Gary Neville there, Kev, that just reminded me, that last episode I watched of the overlap, they were talking about their experiences of being managers and owners of clubs. And he was basically saying the owner and the scouting team should be who signs players, because they're the ones that are left with the financial liability and, you know, the potential downside, all of that. They take all the risk. The manager's in the job. The manager's in the job for a year, 2 years, 3 years, and then he's gone. And he just walks away from whatever potential shambles he's left behind. So he was very much of the opinion, and of course there was counter opinion saying, well, surely the manager is the one who takes responsibility. It's an interesting argument.
I would agree with that if they didn't have brains or sausage roll meat and actually keep on sacking managers and bringing in guys who are completely different for the manager that they just sacked. Like, if you've got a consistency over the style and your identity, that's great. But if you're going for Pep Guardiola to Craig Levein, then you deserve failure completely.
What a thought. It goes back to, obviously, you know, just getting into the Celtic history as a wee guy. And Jockstein's arrival was on the proviso that he had complete control of the football matters. So, but then you see it, obviously, John, from the perspective of someone who's owned a football club, and you could be left with a lot of players that are no good for you, and you're hemorrhaging cash as a result of that. Happy Wednesday to you as well, John. I'm just going to run through some of these messages coming in. James Devine, I hope Kühn is a cross between Jota and Tom. Hey, I'd be happy with that. Tom was a much underrated player, maybe due to the fact that he was just before the right good times. I know he had a few successes. Sanjay, Celtic Supporters Club. I said yesterday, jokingly, that maybe Sanjay had a word with Peter Lovell yesterday, and that's why the transfers have started to come in. Jungle Lion, Paddy Lavery, we're going to be seeing you very soon, actually, in February. I'll be in your neck of the woods with Jackie McNamara and Simon Donnelly for a live event, so I'm looking forward to that. Is it just me, or does Kühn bear a strong resemblance to Paddy Roberts? Somebody pointed out, top half of his head's Paddy Roberts and the bottom half's Henrik Larsson. If he can take some elements from any of those two players, I will be delighted with that as well. And we've got Marky Boy, Afternoon Troops, a left back and a goalie, I think would win us this title, which is crucial. One last point on the striker situation, John. Are we going to run with it, knowing that a couple of the guys can basically play as strikers? It's maybe not their first position. Abada, for example, Maeda, when he's back from the Asian Cup. Are we just going to run with what we've got?
It looks like we are. I don't think we should, but then again, I don't think we should be playing these games. I don't understand why we're being martyrs here and playing games during the Asian Cup if we don't have to. You know, if we don't have to play those games, we shouldn't be playing them. Why, you know, we're not getting any points for martyring ourselves and saying, oh no, we're just going to power on. Well, who cares if you power on? We're not playing in Europe. You know, plenty of time to make these games up when we've got a full squad. I just don't see the point. You know, what does it achieve? You know, we're missing guys, some of whom are important to us. Why take the risk if we don't have to? We're being told we don't need to. Why would we? I don't get it. I just don't get it. And we're talking about
we're five bodies down, John, aren't we?
Yeah, so you're taking that point, Paul John. Your point is we're talking about potentially spending millions to get in to cover people that are away for a tournament.
Yeah.
We don't have to play the games. We don't have to play the games. We don't need to cover them. You know, so I don't understand the logic at all.
No, I take that because, I mean, you know, 5 players, I expected 6, but obviously Kyogo's on the reserve list. 5 players out your squad, how many of them would be in your first team squad, like your 18 that Kev's talking about? Well, most of them. The only one that wouldn't really be would be Tillio. So you're down 4 players from your squad. And like you say, John, we're talking about strikers because you don't want to run with one, particularly with any kind of concerns that you have with Kyogo's injury. There was an occasion this season where he's had to leave the field to get his shoulder popped back into play. in its place even. Kenneth McCauley, thank you very much for supporting the channel. It's always an absolute pleasure to hear from Acsom listeners all the way from Australia. Australia's right up there, actually. I was looking at this yesterday. Somebody asked the question. It's still right up there when it comes to demographics of who tunes into Acsom. So it's great. I know that we had a big fan base over there in any case, but I think we've seen a spike when Ange came along. And thankfully, a lot of you have stayed with us. We've also got Mike Gala reminds us that Haksabanovic is going to be back in the summer as well. There's another winger to deal with. He's not going to play under Brendan Rodgers either. Kev, talking about who signs who and all this kind of stuff, we had a really interesting discussion with Anfield Rap guys about Brendan Rodgers' time at Liverpool, and there was players signed by committee. I can't remember the exact figure, but was it something like 1 in 3 Brendan had kind of full say on? He had a bit of autonomy on. Is that the way it worked at Liverpool for him?
Aye, that goes back to my Firmino thing. They were bringing in 2 guys. Rodgers got 1, and the committee got 1. Rodgers got Benteke, and they brought in Firmino, who turned out playing 300 games for Liverpool, and Christian Benteke went back to Crystal Palace almost within about 9 months. Going back to about the striker, I understand what John's saying there, but I think we'll bring in a striker on loan with probably an option to buy. I think that's where we're probably looking at this precise moment in time. Or we might bring in London Dykes permanently.
Oh, on that note, you took that too far. You started off slagging Bunt Island and you finished it off slagging off my namesake.
Look, there's folk in the comments saying I'm annoyed today. I'm quite happy today. This is me happy.
You're relaxed.
I'm
Somebody's asking
jovial.
here. Michael wants to know. Yeah. Do you always wear? Have you always worn spec? Off and on since I've known you, Kev. It's
off and on. If I take them off, this screen is completely blurry. You actually look better, John. Sorry.
That could have gone either way. It could have gone.
So that's why my side's just getting a wee bit worse.
Hang on, Kev. Oh, jeez. Right, I see what you mean.
I'll keep mine off, guys. Right. Thank you, everybody, for getting involved. Well over 1,000 on this Wednesday afternoon. Yeah, we feel a wee bit more buoyant. There's a new body in the building. Is there going to be any more? Let us know in the comment section where you would prioritise. And obviously, we've got a game of football to look forward to this weekend, which is a bit of a novelty now. Please give us a big thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, follow us on the socials. Loads coming up in 2024. All that's left for me to say, John Hughes and Kevin Graham, thank you once again for joining me on A Celtic State of Mind.